You're listening to the SAFM Market Update with Moneyware, brought to you by the Escalator Funds from Discovery Invest. Discovery is an authorized financial services provider. Rudolph Gouws has been around the block a few times, tells us he's now almost approaching David Shapiro's age. Gee, that's old, Rudolph. Yeah, well, we've now got a podcast, a vodcast rather, so you will be able to see Rudolph's grey hair on YouTube tomorrow. But the reason why we're talking today is to have a look, Rudolph, at this business confidence index. It's gone from 33 to 27. Effectively, it means 1/3 of the people that you interviewed were still positive in the last 3 months of last year. Now that's down to just about a quarter. That's a big drop.
That's a big drop. It's, as our note there says, it's a 10-year low. But I think what is worth knowing is that in the 70s and 80s, that index at 5 occasions got down to a level of about 10, which means that in the old days, when some people sort of hanker back for that, things were actually in many respects a great deal worse.
What did it mean, 10?
10 means that only 1 in 10 of the 3,000 respondents that the Bureau for Economic Research survey feel good about things. Whereas, as you just pointed out, now we are at, let's say, just more than a quarter. So certainly this is better, but it doesn't mean that the economy is doing well. I mean, this indicator of ours is a fairly good predictor of tough times, of which there's still a little bit to come.
Rudolph, you know international situations. You've been around a block more than a few times. If you were doing the survey in the United States,
it'll be a lot worse.
Where do you think it would come out?
Well, I would have thought the sort of levels that I've just mentioned.
Under 10 or less?
Easily, and not just there. Ireland, Spain, name it. And a lot of these countries will have readings that are a great deal lower than ours. In fact, the interesting thing here is that if you look at the breakdown, retailers' confidence has actually ticked up to very slightly into positive terrain. And also, if you look at the recent retail sales numbers, they're not off nearly as much as they had been in previous South African downswings. So there's still life out there, certainly in sectors such as motor vehicles, and we survey, or the Bureau surveys the car dealers as well. That is way, way down. But still, in general, this economy isn't as flat on its back as it's sometimes made out to be.
So in the past 3 months, going from a figure of 33, or one in 3 people who were confident, to 27, say 1 in 4, where has the swing been? Which are the sectors that have now gone negative?
Well, the worst performance, unfortunately, was out there in the real world, in the manufacturing sector and in building. Both of those took quite a bad tumble. And I think somehow the deterioration in the manufacturing number is related, of course, back into the car sales that we were just talking about. That a fairly substantial portion of South Africa's manufacturing sector manufactures components for the motor industry, and we know car sales are some 35% down on the year before. Part of the manufacturing sector also beneficiates things that come out of mining, and we know that mining output is way down, and that people read about this world recession and about China sending ships back from their ports and so forth. So clearly that must weigh on their mood as well.
So it's manufacturers mainly that have been the swing so far, but retailers are still holding their own?
They're holding their own. And
does that mean that they're about to get a hit? Or, because many people say South Africa is going to feel the worst of the international recession at some point?
Well, we, after all, still have interest rate cuts ahead of us. We've got a large portion now of the population receiving social grants. We've got a budget that stimulates government spending quite substantially, and in particular in those areas that have a fairly quick spin-off through to the rest of the world. So yes, while I think retail sales are going to remain extremely weak, it doesn't mean that we have to now anticipate a major new decline.
Rudolph, go back 25 years when the economy was structured somewhat differently, because there had been massive restructuring in that period. If we were going through what we're going through now, where do you think business confidence would be?
I think it would be a lot lower than it is now. Well, for one thing, 25 years ago we had, of course, a far worse political environment than we have now, but more importantly, at that point we had fiscal policy that was badly pro-cyclical. By that I mean we raised taxes often in recessions, we cut taxes in upswings. The government finances made things cyclically worse. Now after 14 years of consolidation of government finances, of bringing about from 9% deficit, the budget through to a surplus the year before last, or last year, of just a small surplus. We've done all of that, which means that we now have a buffer that, thank goodness, Trevor and his two predecessors hadn't listened to his critics on the left, and he had actually brought about a situation where we now have government finances that can be pro-cyclical, or sorry, contra-cyclical, but at the same time not putting at risk the fundamental health of our government
finances. So in other words, supporting when we're in the bad times, almost being the opposite to a banker and giving you an umbrella when it starts to rain rather than taking it away.
I was hoping you weren't going to use that example.